I asked my student why he arrived at school 30 minutes early every day. His answer made me cry. I've been a high school teacher for a little over 10 years, and if there's one thing this job teaches you, it's that teenagers are terrible at hiding when something's wrong. They think they're being subtle.
They're usually not.
Some stop turning in homework. Some get loud because they're looking for attention. Others get really quiet. You start noticing little changes after doing this long enough. Then there was Noah. He wasn't loud. He wasn't a troublemaker. Honestly, if you looked at attendance records and grades, you'd probably think he was one of the easiest students in the building. He showed up every day. He got decent grades. He never argued. Never interrupted class. If anything, he was almost invisible. But there was one thing about him that never made sense. Every morning, he showed up at least 30 minutes before the first bell. Not once in a while. Every single day. The school doors technically opened at 7:15. I'd usually get there around 6:50 because I liked having a quiet classroom before everyone else arrived. And every morning, before I even unlocked my door, Noah was already there, sitting on the same bench in the hallway, his faded backpack beside him, a worn paperback open in his hands. Sometimes he was actually reading. Sometimes he just held it in his lap while staring at the floor. At first, I figured his parents probably dropped him off early before heading to work. It wasn't that unusual, so I didn't think much about it. But after almost a month of seeing the exact same routine, I finally gave in. One morning, I walked over with my coffee and smiled. "Morning, Noah." "Morning, Mr. Carter. You mind if I ask you something?" "Sure." "Why are you always here so early?" He looked at me for maybe 2 seconds. Then he shrugged. "It's warmer here than home." That was it. No hesitation. No emotion. Just a simple answer. Honestly, I didn't know what to say. For a second, I wondered if I should ask another question. Instead, I just nodded. "Well, once I unlock my classroom, you're welcome to wait inside." He gave me a small smile. "Thanks." Then he picked his book back up. I unlocked the door, but his answer stayed in my head the rest of the morning. At first, I assumed maybe their heating wasn't working. It was late November, and temperatures had dropped a lot that week. Plenty of families struggled with expensive heating bills. I figured it was probably something like that. Turns out, I wasn't even close. Over the next couple of weeks, I started paying a little more attention. Not in a creepy way, just noticing things. His backpack looked older every week. One zipper was broken, so he'd tied a shoelace through it instead. His sneakers were falling apart. The soles were separating from the shoes. One rainy morning, I noticed his socks were soaked. He never complained. Never asked for anything. He'd just quietly sit through class like nothing was wrong. The weird part was that Noah was actually a really smart kid. Whenever we discussed books, he'd have something thoughtful to say. Nothing flashy, just honest observations that made the whole class stop and think. If I asked a question nobody else could answer, Noah usually could. Then he'd immediately go back to being quiet. He wasn't trying to impress anyone. He just genuinely paid attention. One afternoon after class ended, I stopped him before he walked out. "Hey, Noah." "Yeah? You ever think about joining the debate team?" He laughed. "No. Why not?" "I don't really like talking." "Funny, you always have good things to say." He smiled politely. "I'd rather just listen." Then he left. I remember thinking that was probably the longest conversation we'd ever had. A few days later, we had a surprise quiz. Nothing difficult. Just something to make sure everyone had actually read the chapter. While everyone was writing, I walked around the room. That's when I noticed Noah rubbing his eyes every few minutes. He looked exhausted. After class, I caught up with him. "You doing okay?" "Yeah. You look tired." "I stayed up late." "Playing video games?" He laughed. "I wish. What kept you up?" He hesitated for the first time, then he shrugged. "Just couldn't sleep." I didn't push it. Teenagers don't usually open up because a teacher asks twice. You have to earn that kind of trust. So I let it go. A week later, I noticed something else. Lunch. Or more accurately, the fact that Noah never seemed to eat one. Our cafeteria wasn't amazing, but most kids either bought lunch or brought something from home. Noah did neither. As soon as lunch started, he'd disappear. At first, I assumed he was eating somewhere else. Maybe outside with friends. Then one day I went to the library during lunch to return a stack of books. There he was, sitting alone, book open. No food. I walked over. "Mind if I sit down?" He looked surprised. "Sure." I glanced around. "No lunch today?" He smiled. "I'm not really hungry." I couldn't help smiling back. "Noah, I've known teenagers for a long time." "What does that mean?" "It means you're lying." He laughed quietly. "I'll eat later." It wasn't convincing. Not even a little. But I also knew calling him out wasn't going to help. So instead, I changed the subject. "What are you reading?" His face lit up for the first time. For the next 10 minutes, he talked about the novel like he'd completely forgotten why I came over. It was the most animated I'd ever seen him. When the lunch bell rang, he thanked me for talking with him. Not for buying him food or checking on him. Just talking. That stuck with me. Because no teenager says thank you for a normal conversation unless they don't get many of them. Looking back, all the signs were right in front of me. I just didn't know how they fit together yet. That changed the following Tuesday. Right after third period, the school counselor knocked on my classroom door. "Mr. Carter, do you have a minute?" The look on her face told me this wasn't going to be a normal conversation. I followed our school counselor into her office, closed the door behind me, and sat down. She didn't waste any time. "This is about Noah." The second she said his name, I knew something was wrong. "I've been keeping an eye on him," I admitted. "Is everything okay?" She sighed. "Not really." Then she explained everything. A few months earlier, Noah and his mom had left an abusive home. His father had been arrested after a violent incident. For their own safety, they packed what they could fit into 2 trash bags and left in the middle of the night. They'd been staying at a homeless shelter ever since. I just sat there. Looking back, all the signs had been there. Noah always arrived before everyone else, wore the same worn-out shoes every day, carried a backpack tied together with a shoelace, and quietly skipped lunch without ever saying why. Then his words echoed in my head. "It's warmer here than home." He hadn't been exaggerating. The shelter required everyone to leave during certain hours of the day. Most mornings, Noah and his mom were out before sunrise. His mom would head to job interviews or temporary work. Noah came straight to school because there was nowhere else to go. "I didn't realize," I said quietly. "Most people don't," the counselor replied. "And honestly, Noah wants it that way." "He doesn't want anyone to know?" She nodded. "He's terrified people will treat him differently." I leaned back in my chair. "Is there anything we can do?" "We're helping where we can," she said. "Free meal program, clothing assistance, transportation. But resources only go so far." I left her office feeling like someone had punched me in the stomach. The thing is, teachers can't fix everything. We don't magically solve someone's life because we care. Sometimes all we can do is make one part of their day a little easier. That afternoon, I mentioned Noah to a few teachers during lunch. Not the details. Just enough so they understood he was having a rough time. Everyone reacted the same way. "What can we do?" Coach Daniels was the first one to come up with an idea. "What if we stop making it obvious?" "What do you mean?" I asked. "If we hand him food because we feel sorry for him, he'll probably stop taking it. He seems like that kind of kid." He was right. Noah had too much pride. Not the arrogant kind. The kind people develop when life has already taken enough from them. Mrs. Bennett from the science department snapped her fingers. "I always pack too much lunch." We all looked at her. She smiled. "Starting tomorrow, I guess I'll accidentally pack extra every day." That became our plan. Simple. The next morning, I walked into the teacher's lounge. There was already a sandwich sitting in the refrigerator with a sticky note. "Too much turkey, please take..." No name. Just the note. I laughed. Coach Daniels walked in carrying 2 bananas. "Guess I accidentally bought too many." Mrs. Bennett rolled her eyes. "You're terrible at acting." "Hey, if he believes it, that's all that matters." Around lunchtime, Noah stopped by my classroom to ask about an assignment. Perfect timing. "Oh, before you go..." I opened the staff fridge. "Huh. What?" "I forgot I already brought lunch today." I held up the sandwich. "You want it?" "Oh, no, that's okay." "You'd actually be helping me out." "I hate wasting food." He looked unsure. "You sure?" "Yeah." He hesitated for another second. Then he quietly said, "Thanks." He took the sandwich and left. I watched him walk down the hallway. He didn't open it right away. Instead, he looked around first, like he wanted to make sure nobody saw him. That broke my heart. Over the next few weeks, it became part of our routine. Mrs. Bennett accidentally packed an extra apple. Coach Daniels accidentally had 2 protein bars. The art teacher accidentally bought too many muffins. Even our assistant principal got involved. One morning, he walked into the lounge, carrying a box of granola bars. "I heard we keep making grocery mistakes around here." Nobody said anything. We all just smiled. The funny part? Noah always acted surprised. Every single time. "Oh, are you sure?" "Yeah. I don't want to take your lunch." "Seriously, it's fine." He'd thank us, then walk away. But after a while, I started noticing something else. He looked healthier. He stopped rubbing his tired eyes through first period. A small smile started appearing more often. Before long, he was raising his hand instead of waiting to be called on. One afternoon, he even made a joke during class. The entire room laughed, including me. I remember thinking, there he is! That's the kid who's been hiding underneath all that stress. A couple of weeks later, Coach Daniels stopped me in the hallway. "You got a second?" "Sure." "You noticed Noah during gym today?" "No." "He almost passed out." My stomach dropped. "What happened?" "He said he got dizzy." The nurse checked him out. Turns out he hadn't eaten since yesterday afternoon. I closed my eyes for a second. Yesterday afternoon, that meant dinner. Coach Daniels shook his head. He tried convincing everyone he was just dehydrated. Kid's stubborn. That afternoon, I found Noah sitting outside my classroom before the buses arrived. I sat beside him. Neither of us spoke for a minute. Finally, I asked, "You feeling better?" He nodded. "Yeah." The nurse called me. He looked down. "I'm sorry." "Why are you apologizing?" I caused a scene. "You passed out." "That's different." "No, it isn't." He stayed quiet. After a few seconds, I said, "You know, asking for help doesn't make you weak." He let out a small laugh. "I wasn't asking." "I know. That's kind of the problem." He didn't answer. Instead, he stared at the floor. He stopped himself. You just what? He shrugged. I don't want people feeling sorry for me. There it was. Fear. The fear that people would only see him as the poor kid. I nodded. I get that. No, you probably don't. He wasn't being rude, just honest. He was probably right. I'd never been in his shoes. So instead of pretending I understood, I said, You're right. I don't. But I do know this. Everyone needs help sometimes. Even teachers. That made him look up. You? Oh, absolutely. I've had coworkers cover my classes. I've borrowed money from my brother before. My parents helped me when I was younger. Life isn't something you get through by yourself. For the first time, he looked like he was actually thinking about what I'd said. Then he smiled. A real smile this time. Not the fake one he used whenever someone asked if he was okay. Thanks, Mr. Carter. I smiled back. For what? For talking to me like I'm normal. He grabbed his backpack and headed toward the buses. I watched him leave, thinking that maybe things were finally getting better. I had no idea the biggest surprise was still waiting for us. It wouldn't happen until nearly 2 years later. On graduation day, after that conversation, nothing really changed overnight. Life doesn't suddenly become easier because someone finally knows what you're going through. But little by little, things started getting better. Noah still came to school early every morning. Old habits are hard to break. Except now, instead of sitting alone in the hallway, he'd come straight into my classroom. I'd usually be grading papers or trying to wake myself up with coffee. He'd sit in the back, read his book, and we'd talk every now and then. Sometimes we'd complain about the weather. Sometimes we'd argue over which movie adaptation ruined a good book. One morning, he looked at the mug on my desk and said, You've been drinking from that same ugly mug all year. I looked down at it. It had a giant chip on the handle. Hey, this mug has character. It has damage. It has history. It belongs in the trash. I laughed. I liked you better when you barely talked. He smiled. Yeah, me too. Moments like that reminded me he was still just a teenager. Just a kid who'd been forced to grow up way too fast. Around Christmas break, the counselor stopped by my room. I've got some good news. What happened? Noah's mom got hired full-time. Really? She nodded. They're moving into an apartment next month. I don't think I've ever been so happy to hear someone was moving into a tiny one-bedroom apartment. A week after winter break, Noah walked into class looking different. He just looked lighter, like he could finally breathe. Before class started, he walked over to my desk. We moved. I smiled. That's awesome. It isn't much. It doesn't have to be. He nodded. My mom keeps saying it's weird having our own keys. I bet. We celebrated by eating frozen pizza on the floor because we don't have a table yet. I laughed. Honestly, that sounds like a pretty good celebration. It was. Then he headed back to his seat. That conversation lasted maybe 30 seconds, but I thought about it all day. Sometimes people don't need everything. Sometimes they just need a place where they finally feel safe. The rest of Noah's junior year flew by. By senior year, people started noticing him for different reasons. He joined the debate team, which still makes me laugh. The kid who once told me he hated talking somehow became one of the best speakers in the school. Turns out he didn't hate talking. He just needed something worth talking about. He also started tutoring freshmen after school. One afternoon, I walked past the library and saw him helping another student with algebra. The freshman looked completely frustrated. Noah smiled and said, Relax. I didn't get it the first time either. Actually, I didn't get it the 5th time. The kid laughed. 5 minutes later, they were both smiling. I stood there for a second before walking away. That's when it hit me. He was becoming the kind of person who helped other people. Looking back, I think that's when I realized he'd be okay. Senior year ended faster than anyone expected. Suddenly, it was graduation week. The halls were covered with decorations. Parents were everywhere taking pictures. Teachers were pretending they weren't emotional. Graduation is always hard. You spend 4 years watching these kids grow up. Then one day they leave. Just like that. The ceremony itself went smoothly. When Noah's name was called, the crowd erupted. His mom stood up before anyone else. She was crying so hard she could barely hold her phone steady. I remembered the woman the counselor had described 2 years earlier. Scared? Trying to protect her son, now she was watching him graduate near the top of his class. She looked proud. After the ceremony, students were everywhere taking pictures with friends and family. I was talking with another teacher when I heard someone call my name. Mr. Carter. It was Noah. Except this time he wasn't alone. His mom was standing beside him. She reached out and shook my hand. I've wanted to thank you for a long time. You don't have to thank me. Yes, she said softly. I really do. She looked like she wanted to say more. Instead, she smiled and stepped away. I'll let you two talk. Noah reached into his graduation gown and pulled out a small white envelope. I wrote something. You don't have to read it now. Actually, I said, if you don't mind. He laughed. I knew you'd say that. I opened the envelope. Inside was a single folded sheet of notebook paper. The first line made me smile. I always knew the sandwiches weren't leftovers. I looked up. He grinned. You guys weren't exactly subtle. I thought we were. No. Coach Daniels accidentally bought extra protein bars every Tuesday. Mrs. Bennett accidentally packed 2 apples every Wednesday. The principal accidentally left snack bags on his desk every Friday. Come on. You really thought I didn't notice? I shook my head. Apparently not. He pointed at the letter. Keep reading. So I did. I knew what you were doing. I just appreciated that nobody ever made me feel like a charity case. You never looked at me with pity. You joked with me. You treated me like every other student. I needed that more than I needed the food. I stopped for a second. Then I read the last part. When everything happened, I felt like my life had turned into one big label. Homeless kid. Broken family. Poor kid. You never called me any of those things. To you, I was just Noah. Thank you for giving me that back. I folded the letter carefully. I don't even know what to say. You don't have to say anything. He smiled. I just wanted you to know it mattered. We shook hands. Then, without really thinking, I pulled him into a hug. He hugged me back. Take care of yourself, I said. I will. And don't disappear. I'll try. He walked away to take more pictures with his mom. I figured that would probably be the last time I'd ever see him. That's usually how teaching works. Students graduate. Life moves on. Every now and then you wonder where they ended up. Most of the time, you never find out. Turns out, Noah had one more surprise for me. About 8 years later, our principal stopped by my classroom. Guess who's here? I have no idea. Come with me. I followed him to the front office. Standing there was a man in a suit talking with the receptionist. For a second, I didn't recognize him. Then he smiled. Still using that ugly coffee mug? Noah? He nodded. It's good to see you, Mr. Carter. We ended up talking for almost an hour. He told me he'd finished college with the help of scholarships. After graduation, he became a social worker. I work with teenagers now, he said. A lot of them come from situations that look a lot like mine. I smiled. They're lucky to have you. I don't know about that. Then he looked around the hallway. I mostly came back because I wanted to see this place again. The school? No. He pointed toward my classroom. That room. It was the first place that ever felt safe. For a second, neither of us said anything. Oh, and I brought you something. He handed me a brand new coffee mug. Printed across the front were the words, "Retire the ugly mug." I laughed so hard I almost dropped it. You remembered. Of course I remembered. I told you it belonged in the trash. The old mug finally got replaced that day. But the letter didn't. It's still sitting in the top drawer of my desk. Every once in a while, especially after a rough week, I'll take it out and read it again. People think teaching is about lesson plans, report cards, and test scores. Those things matter,